Hello, hello, hello. Let me tell you guys about something. Friendship is a weird and wonderful thing. Even if you find your friends in weird, unusual places, I bet you that those weird and wonderful places will bring you wonderful and amazing friends. And it's a beauty. It will have been a beauty to have met those friends, irrespective of those places. Now, when I met Yeti Suli, it's us creative 2 years ago, I was pretty happy. He was just building Stroheim, a nice city in Sus Creative, and I was just importing Charlottetown with the help of Moraine. So once we started to roleplay together in Sus Creative, we found each other. At least I found him to be a wonderful role player and a person who puts 110% into his work. And I was happy for that. When we first roleplayed the Civil War, for example, he was the one that was making battle maps for updating others about how the war was going. And I was pretty happy with that. Now that we've had 2 years or more to know each other, at least from my perspective, I find him an interesting being, a wonderful being, and a man who, well, let's just say we have a lot more in common than I thought we had. And how do I know that? Well, he plays Chivalry 2, my brother plays Chivalry 2, and if you see my streams, I play Chivalry 2. And it's a pretty cool game where you team up with others, and from there, do a lot of battles. And it teaches you wonderful lessons about friendship and working together as a team, which I'm pretty happy about. And it's very true for Yeti Suli. So in terms of that, well, what else can I really say about him? Or than, well, what I've already said. But I hope that you see in this interview something similar to what I just said. That Yesu is a wonderful guy. And honestly, I'm glad to have to interview him. I'm glad to have that privilege of interviewing him. So I hope that in this interview you get to see that. I hope you get to see what Yeti Suli is really like. What I've seen over the last 2 years. With all that being said, let's talk to Yeti Suli. Alright, I'm here with Yeti Suli, and would you like to introduce yourself before we start?
Hi guys, I'm Yeti Zuli. I mean, a lot of people maybe know me from the server we play on together, but I mean, aside from being a Minecraft player, I'm also a architecture student. I'm going to school to be an architect. I'm very interested in urban planning as well. And,
legends.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of overlapping interests. I mean, it's kind of funny, the City Skylines pipeline, so to speak, of like urban planning rabbit holes.
Yeah. Like you
But,
get to
yeah.
you get to plan like grids and stuff like that, so I get what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a little better. I think especially the second game doesn't quite have the degree of freedom. Like they kind of all lead you towards this car-centric mode of operating, which I mean, fair enough, but there's a lot of other ways to plan cities, and I think like if you look at a lot of European places, you can kind of see how like the car is kind of almost secondary.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's something I'm very passionate about, and I'm excited to be here. Yeah, so thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you. So, the first question is that, well, my brother actually wanted me to ask your opinion regarding the fire chicken and the archer class. Do you enjoy shooting enemies with a bow from far away, or do you prefer charging yourself?
Well, you see, I used to play Mordhau, which is similar to Chivalry, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say it's a little the mechanics are a little harder to learn, and as a result, like the skill ceiling's a little higher, but you get like people who take the game very seriously. And there was always this like negative stigma around archers. Like it was like, oh, don't play archer, you know? Like so I don't know. I guess I kind of took that forward. I really don't. I'm not very good at archer. I don't play archer.
Fair enough.
I feel like it's one of those things where if you're good at it, go for it. But if you're not good at it, like you're not really helping the team very much, to be honest.
Yeah, admittedly, when I played Chivalry 2, I didn't. I sometimes tried to use Archer, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I would just go in and charge my axe and stuff, and just go in and.
Yeah, my favorite class is the I think it's called the Officer. It's one of the knight variants.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Archer, I don't know. It's also tough, like if you get caught off guard, like you really can't defend yourself very well. But no, I much prefer like being in the action. But yeah, no, like I'm really enjoying Chivalry 2. I think they kept some of the aspects from the first game, like the classes. Like Mordhau doesn't have classes. It's kind of just like make your own guy, do whatever. But I feel like yeah, with Chivalry, like it feels more cinematic almost. Even the way that they like start the rounds and stuff, with the little intro sequences.
Exactly. Yeah, they show off the teams and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't know, yeah, I think it's like it builds upon the success of both games, I think. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I only got it quite recently, but yeah, I used to play Chivalry. I played the first Chivalry. I used to play Mordhau. And yeah, like it kind of brings me back to all that. So it's a fun game.
Well, regarding your Chivalry 2 experience, do you prefer teaming up with others, or do you prefer just going solo yourself? And are you actually a part of a group that does Chivalry 2 together?
I am not part of any groups. I don't even know. I mean, I guess there's probably like some guilds or something you can join, but I kind of just like, you know, fight where I can. I'm sure like there's probably some strategy involved if you like got a few people on voice chat together.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do some formations or something. That'd be pretty cool actually, but it's not something I've experienced. I kind of just like go in there and just fight on the front lines where I can. But I mean, you know, I can make a little impromptu formation if we have to. And you know, as you know, that probably happens quite a bit in the game. Especially when you're like holding a choke point or something, like that one bridge map. With the Agathians and the Masons. Yeah, no, I don't know, it's a lot of fun, but yeah, like I've never tried like dueling before. I mean, I'm guessing they probably still have the 1v1s that they did in the old game, but yeah, dueling wasn't really something I ever got into too much.
Right.
I just find it to be a little like it doesn't quite have the pace that I want, you know.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that you just picked up the game. What made you? And you mentioned your experience with Morben, right? Morben.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Mordhau, yeah.
Mordhau.
I mean, I knew that Chivalry 2 had been out for a while. Um, I also knew like what people were saying about the game, so like for comparison, yeah, like I mentioned, Mordhau, there's a little bit more control you have, I would say. Like you have a bit of a wider move set, but
Right.
um it does make the game a little bit more challenging, and I don't think it's as forgiving, which has its pros and cons. You know, like
Yeah.
if you're really good at the game, um, then like you're very difficult to stop. But I think in a lot of the kind of 1vx situations in Mordhau, like you really wouldn't have stood a chance. Whereas in Chivalry, I feel like you can kind of pull off these like 1v4s a little easier, which is pretty fun. Like just the way blocking works and stuff.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
especially if you're like going in and it's just yourself, but you manage to like with a big weapon, you manage to just destroy so many
Yeah.
enemies at once.
I know, yeah, and you can kind of like jump back and forth between enemies,
Yeah.
which I really like. But yeah, like in Mordhau, the only way you could like do a block is if you had a shield. Like otherwise, you just have to parry. Whereas like in Chivalry 2, you can hold a block, which I mean doesn't seem like that big of a change, but it makes a huge difference. Because it's like I think a big part of Mordhau was like trying to trick people into blocking too early, and then that kind of became how the duels would kind of play out. But no, I don't see that in Chivalry. It's a little more unpredictable, which I think is fun. Yeah.
Do you generally like playing medieval? Do you generally like medieval history, or do you like stuff like ancient history or modern history? Like, where do you fall in the history's timeline?
I'm fascinated by history. I wouldn't say I particularly gravitate towards ancient history. I find it a little I don't know. It's interesting to me, but I guess it's just not as accessible to us. Like I think we have a lot more information about more recent times, but I don't know. It's really interesting to see like the way people lived and sort of like even going back to the city stuff, like how their settlements kind of were planned and where they decided to live. I mean, like, you know, it was the case for millennia that, you know, we would kind of be living, you know, near resources, near the food. We live near the food. We live near the water. And you can kind of see how like cities are kind of organized around that, like markets and stuff, and like, you know, like butcher districts, things like that. I find them super interesting, and yeah, a lot of them have their holdovers from medieval times in Europe. Plus, like, you know, I have a background in architecture, and in Europe, you saw the kind of advent of what we call the master builder, which is like a sort of like a proto architect.
Right.
So there were architects in the ancient times, but not too much is known about them, other than like the books that some of them wrote that we still have. But the kind of architecture tradition was like lost for a bit, and then was kind of reignited by these master builders in Europe, who would have been responsible for building like Notre Dame or like cathedrals like that, very important buildings.
Yeah.
And that became kind of the foundation onto which we built like our contemporary tradition of architecture, which again, it's a topic that's super fascinating to me. I could talk about it for hours. But yeah, like I am very interested in history. even like more contemporary stuff. I think it's just interesting to like put into perspective how recently everything has happened. You know, like I feel like that's one thing that you find when you're studying history is like stuff didn't happen that long ago, and you can kind of see like the continuity of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the Industrial Revolution was only like what 300.
Oh my God! Yeah.
300-ish years ago. So
I
we did
know.
not
Yeah.
trust
And, yeah, and look at how it completely transformed everything. I mean, like, pretty much every city is either built around trains or cars. You know, like
Yeah.
every single city. It just
America is
completely
only-
revolutionized.
America is only like a little bit over 200 years old. So
Yeah, you know, that was a crazy experience for me the first time I went to Europe.
Right.
I went to Hungary, and like I just remember walking on the street and just passing just casually passing a 400-year-old building, and I was like, wow, this is older than Canada, this is older than the United States.
yeah.
And it's just there, and I don't know, it's like a crazy thing to kind of be in a place that has such a tradition to its built world.
And then and then you might go to Rome or China or
Oh my God,
Athens,
yeah.
and then yeah, buildings
Yeah, and
that are
then
so
you're-
old that they
Yeah.
our current some of them were built before our current calendar existed, before we had like some of them were built like in BC era, in the BC. So
Yeah, that's even more crazy. And I mean, it's interesting to look at like sort of like the differences between the way that these places were preserved too, because after Rome fell, like the city kind of just got like appropriated by whoever was living there, and that like tradition of their culture didn't really like carry on in the same way. So like the Colosseum, for example, I think was used as like a fort for a little while, like as a defensive structure, just because of the way it was designed. So it's kind of interesting to see how like, you know, people build something and then it completely changes its meaning like throughout the course of its life. But yeah, I don't know much about ancient China, but I imagine there's a bit more of a sense of like not kind of completely erasing the traditions. I know that they built over a lot of their old cities in the kind of Reconstruction era, but yeah, like I think with Rome, like you had a lot of people that were maybe Romans, maybe weren't Romans, who were living there and kind of just you know, took the city as it was. And yeah, but I mean, I think it's a super interesting topic. Plus you can even see like Roman planning, how it's kind of like affected the way we think about places. Like the grid is like not a new concept. Like that was like a Roman thing. It was like the Roman military towns. That's how they planned their cities. So and it's just kind of become a ubiquitous thing in Western culture. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like a lot of our ideas, some of them are relatively recent, some of them are very, very old. In terms of like the kind of patterns of our settlements and things like that.
Now, which Chivalry 2 team do you prefer? Do you prefer Mason or do you prefer Agatha?
Ooh, no, I am staunchly pro Agatha. You know, like let's get the this false king out of here. You know, like he took over the throne. No, I really just, it comes down to I think their armor looks cooler. Yeah, I don't know. The Masons look like sort of like a bunch of mercenaries or something. Like
Yeah.
some of their armor is like kind of like just like ragtag stuff. Um, but yeah, I really like the full plate armor that the Agatha Knights have. Because that's kind of like my favorite armor style is like sort of that German Gothic style from like the Renaissance.
Right.
Like with the Saleh helmet and sort of like, when they were using halberds and stuff like that. That's my favorite medieval weapon, by the way, is halberd. Most versatile in my opinion. But so yeah, like I just kind of like that aesthetic. But yeah, I don't know. I think the Tenosians are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Although I wish there was more customization for them. Yeah.
Well, all right. Now, besides Chivalry 2 and Minecraft, which we'll get to, and and that one game, which name I keep forgetting, but it starts with Murray, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, besides those, do you have any other favorite video games? Are you into for example, first-person shooters or first-person combat games? And what got you into video games in general?
Oh, great question. Well, like I said, I feel like one of my favorite games is of course City Skylines. I mean, I know Jen's talked about it a lot, but I just really like kind of being able to exercise some of the stuff I've learned about urban planning and kind of like think about the systems of cities. Like I find it like a super interesting problem to try and solve. And that's kind of like a lot of the reasons why I play video games is like it's sort of like a creative activity for me in a lot of cases. Like I have two kinds of games I play. I have like the kind of releasing Steam games, and then I have like the creative outlet games. So, I mean, other games I play. I mean, I really like Helldivers 2. I think that's a fun game.
Yeah, I see you in your status.
Yeah.
I keep seeing Helldivers too.
Yeah, that game is honestly a great game, but yeah, like that's one of those games that I just play for like just enjoyment. But like for Minecraft, for me, I mean I've been playing Minecraft for over 10 years, but I had these periods where I didn't play very much.
Right.
And I think what would always bring me back to the game is sort of like the creative freedom that it offers. Because like I have like in school I have like studio projects or whatever, and they have like certain parameters to them, but in Minecraft I can kind of just build whatever I want to build. And it becomes a useful chance for me to kind of like do like creative design research in a fun way, where I'm like looking at different cities and how they build things and translating that into Minecraft. So it's like a fun little creative puzzle for me.
Right.
But yeah, like I mean, man, like when did I get into video games? Like I must have been pretty young. I think my first system was either like a PS2 or an N64 or something like that. But one of my favorite games that I had growing up was it was like this Jurassic Park game, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. It was a park builder, so I mean you can kind of see like I kind of gravitate towards these like building games, but
right. And then you expanded towards cities.
Yeah. So I started with like designing parks, and then designing cities, designing buildings. But yeah, like it's kind of like a digital canvas in a way. I don't know. Like that's how I view Minecraft. I don't really view it as like at least the way we play it. I don't really view it as much as like a game anymore. It's kind of like a digital canvas, for people to kind of like express what they're interested in, like what kind of kind of places they want to see built in the real world. It's pretty fascinating. Sort of like what happens when you just give people complete freedom like that. But yeah, like I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully that answers the question.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Listen, I believe it was Amanta who said when I was doing his interview that he was practically born on one hand with a video game controller. So I could imagine a similar situation for you, but instead of a video game controller is like a pen and pencil.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I've been drawing ever since I was young.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, I would draw these, like sort of these large, kind of mural scenes. Like I would tape a bunch of printer paper together and make this really big sheet, and then I would draw these like massive scenes on it and like build these little worlds. Like it was like super fun for me, and I would like cut out little characters and like put them on the map and stuff. And I don't know, I can kind of see how that translated into like Minecraft or architecture or like City Skylines. But I don't know, I just I enjoy the like imaginative aspects of it. Because I think one of the nice things about Minecraft over like more traditional methods of like representation is it's like interactive. If you can engage with it, which I mean, unless you're doing like installation artwork, I don't think there's much that can really come close to that. So I think that if you ask a lot of people, they kind of share that sentiment about the game. But yeah, I think it's a really powerful tool for like bringing people together in that way. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Minecraft, did you ever play servers like Hypixel, MSO, what main game? If you played Hypixel and those kinds of servers, what main game did you prefer to play? And well, I was gonna ask you what got you into Minecraft in the first place, but I think we already covered that. So
yeah, Hypixel. Yeah, I definitely used to play Hypixel. I think they had like an art game at one point. I don't know if they still do.
I think so. I think they do.
Yeah, that's my favorite game on Hypixel. I used to play what did I used to, I don't know, it's been so long since I played Hypixel. I was never really like an avid Hypixel player.
Yeah.
I never really like took on to mini games that much. Like before getting into creative servers, I used to play like factions, but I wasn't very good at factions. I would always like build a town and just try and like get along with people, and then inevitably get raided or something.
Yeah. So it's the way of the survival games. It's the way of the survival servers.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like maybe I should have gone to like towny servers or something. But yeah, like there were some fun experiences with that. But I guess like eventually you realize like just how much time and labor it takes to build stuff in survival, and you're like, nah, I'm just gonna play creative. This is too much.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but yeah, in terms of mini games, I mean, actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Disasters. I don't know if that's a Hypixel mini game or if it's on another one of the big servers.
I think so. I when I was playing Roblox, I would play a natural disaster survival or something like that. So
yeah. So I would no, that was one of my favorite games on Roblox. Yeah, no, that was, oh my god, I remember like Survive the Noobs or something. Like I don't even know. Like there were some really funny ones. But They have like a Minecraft equivalent. It's on one of the big mini game servers, or at least it was. I don't know if it still is, but I actually got to work with the person who originally developed the concept for that mini game.
Wow.
So yeah, I used to play on this. Oh, what was it called? I think it was called Red Warfare. It's been closed for many years now, but yeah, we had like a coder who used to play on there, and he came up with several mini games, and that was one of them. So like we kind of got to make some of the original maps for it, which I don't think they use anymore. I think they went with more like I guess consistent map designs. But like that was super fun. That was a really fun time. Kind of getting to like test out new mini games and stuff. But yeah, like it was very much inspired by the Roblox, like Survive the Disasters. Yeah, and I remember we had like some interesting ones. Like there was like acid rain and like anti-gravity, or like there, and then there's the standard like flooding ones or
Yeah.
freezing. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a fun time. Yeah, but that's kind of my experience with like mini game servers. Yeah.
Well, we've both met on Cess Creative, and that's been a topic in many episodes lately.
Yeah.
So the first question I really have for you regarding Cess Creative is, how did you hear about it? Like, what drew you into Cess Creative?
So I found out about this server because Miro basically told our old server about this place. Our server like shut down, and then there was a period of where we were sort of trying to merge with other places, but it didn't really work out.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really very active for that time, so I don't really know what happened between then and here. But at some point, Miro found Zest, and I just kind of popped in here, and I was like, "Oh, what's this place?" I don't know. But I think the thing that sold me was like looking at the blue map and seeing how, especially in the original kind of map area, all of the like cities were connected by roads or trains or stuff, because that was something that honestly doesn't happen as much in like
Yeah.
free build kind of servers, like this kind of people sort of making like these collective networks that kind of like connect all their cities together, and then there's like kind of a shared idea that like, oh yeah, like this place, it's not just a map, it's like these places like exist in relation to each other, which is really it's something that we tried to do in our old server, but it just never really worked out that well.
It's
Yeah.
something like that. I think requires a good community and a good
Yeah.
relationship between community members. At least
Yeah,
good enough to work together on this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it sort of takes like some collective understandings about things. Like on our old server, what ended up happening was we had like one portion of the map which was where you had like the modern cities, and then we had like kind of on the peripheries is where you could build whatever you wanted. And it was like it sort of worked, but again, like it didn't really do much to establish that kind of like shared lore. Like that wasn't really an element that we had, which maybe is kind of, I don't know, maybe that's something you need to have to make stuff like that work. Like I mean, it's worked for Zest, but yeah, I don't know. Like it doesn't happen that much, and yeah, it's like you said, it only really happens when like the players kind of like collectively want to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And admittedly, I had a similar story when I first discovered Cest. Like me and my pals were looking for another server to go to because of, let's just say, bad server situations, and
Yikes,
we found
yeah.
Cest, and oh, we all know where this
Yeah.
story's going. But
Yeah.
but another thing is we also have a similar situation because there's this city called Seitu, and there's my city, Startown, and in the E-Dog world, that's the server that we left, so to say. We were actually like one sort of larger congregation of cities, and like I have plans to connect my metro to Darren Metro and stuff like that. So I
Oh, yeah.
I actually get where you're coming from when it comes to having one larger project, like speaking from experience. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but
Well, I mean, yeah, like on like okay, so Miro and I for a brief time we co-hosted a like a creative server because like we merged with somebody else, but then they left the project. So we kind of took it over. And that's sort of what we did. It's very similar to what Laurentia is today. So it was like a semi-planned city with like different lots that people could build, or you could build like new neighborhoods. And it was very, very difficult to, I guess, kind of, I don't want to say regulate, but like sort of, yeah, regulate. Like, I don't know. I guess we were trying to make like somewhat of a realistic city. And some people like understood our kind of like systems and stuff like that we were following, but for others it was like a little too abstract. And it created like some difficulties, but I feel like we learned a lot from that. But I think like, yeah, I mean like what Zest is doing, I think works a lot better than that system because it's like, okay, you know, there's kind of an understanding of like sort of the rail network and how that's supposed to be built, and like highways are generally built the same, but like beyond that it's like kind of up to you what you want to do with your place.
yeah,
And it gives people like, you know, you don't have to worry about like, oh, like sort of the unified look of a city because you're working on your own city, you know. That was yeah, like for Laurentia, it has some of the elements that Miro and I were using, like, you know, the lots correspond to different types of zones, and there's like some indications of, you know, how tall a story should be so that the buildings like roughly look the same scale. But I dropped all of the stuff about like setbacks and stuff because it was like, yeah, like especially for like younger players, it can be like a difficult thing to wrap your head around because it is a pretty abstract concept. But anyways, I wanted to ask you. So you mentioned how your city, and then
Saito.
what was it? Yeah, Saito. So these were like you wanted to connect them together. Are they like?
They were already like connected.
Okay.
There's only this
Yeah.
highway that separated us technically, but yeah.
Yeah, because I was curious, like on the old server, were these two cities like relatively in the same location that they are, like relative to each other now?
Yeah, but they were much closer. In the Laurentero map, folks, there's an entire desert that kind of separates Seitu from Startown. And in the E-Dog world, in the actually in the Cicero, that desert is pretty large, and that
Yeah.
distance was also pretty middle-sized, large. But in Edog, that distance was much shorter. Like,
Yeah.
there's this castle right in Shartown that was imported from Seitu, and that castle was kind of closer. It was in between Seitu and Shartown. So yeah,
Oh, okay.
Seitu, then that little castle thing, and then Shartown.
I
And
see. Yeah.
also another thing, there's this makeshift town with like its own wall, like where Hui Barton is right now, or almost close to Hui Barton, which is the western part of Shartown. We didn't get to import that town, but there was that town right between the castle and Shartown. So there's kind of like, besides the highway, two big things that separated Seitu from Shartown on Edog.
I see. Yeah.
Um,
So you kind of got rid of a lot of those barriers then. Yeah.
yeah, even though it wasn't like we didn't plan for these things to be gone. I actually
Yeah.
wanted the airport and my little manor thing that I had on the north side of the city to be included in the main main city, but we didn't get to do that. Um, but yeah, there's a
I
lot
mean,
more
yeah.
stuff. There's a lot more stuff on Adol that we didn't get to import, either because the folks that built them aren't Ancest, or the size of the imports were so big that we had to separate them, and some stuff didn't get through.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess it's difficult to grab stuff now because
Yeah.
we don't have to get into that. But yeah, like yeah, we know
Yeah,
how.
if you know, you know. If you don't, it's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like I have a lot of my old builds on Zest, like on the kind of legacy maps, and thankfully, like those maps have been removed. I mean, I haven't grabbed stuff from there in a while, but yeah, like I did take a lot of my old builds from like Kagger over to like kind of my new area now. So yeah, like my country is kind of like a amalgamation of old stuff and new stuff. Um,
My next questions
but
are about
yeah,
this, about your country.
yeah.
I should probably get to those. And the first question there is, you put a ton of effort into this country called Astrosen, and
Yes.
especially the city of Stroheim. What about Astrosen and Stroheim called you? What motivates you to build there?
So I mean, I normally build like American style stuff because that's just what I'm familiar with. Like that's kind of always what I've like gravitated towards, and even in some ways, I feel like some of the cities that I build, like Hafenburg, has some North American influences, but I really just wanted to try something new and like try really to make like a European esque city. And yeah, like it just became like an interesting exercise for me to like learn about the way that these cities are planned and really try to like challenge a lot of the kind of default positions that I take. Like I'm so used to just, you know, building roads and then like building houses or something, but it was kind of interesting to try different builds out. Like I think one of the most memorable ones for me is the Capitol building, which
Yeah,
yeah,
the capital. We'll get a photo of that shortly.
oh yeah,
That's for editor. That's for ever. That is for editor me to find out and figure out. But we'll have this picture of this. It's a
yeah,
huge building. It's a huge building. There's like two chambers, right, and then one
yeah,
large hall, and then a
yeah,
wonderful garden surrounding it. It's actually facing. It's actually in the war front as well. So it's actually facing the river that separates Stroheim from
Yeah.
another city or so.
Um, it is. It's so big that it doesn't even load in all at once. Like unless you have distant horizons, like you can't see it at once,
Yeah.
which is crazy. But yeah, like that. I don't know if you saw me while I was building it, but it started out like there was a lot of math involved in making that build. Like proportioning the areas and kind of like trying to figure out how tall the building should be. Um, it was a pretty big endeavor. I think it took me about a month to build it, and I was like working on it pretty frequently. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's one of the largest Capitol buildings in Laurentia. I think.
I think it's the largest in Orange.
Yeah, second only to the Zan campus, if you want to count that. But yeah, it is.
I think they're a similar size. I think.
Yeah, yeah, maybe they're the
Yeah.
similar size. Yeah, I think the Zan campus is wider, but maybe mine's longer. I don't know. But yeah, it has two chambers, and that kind of reflects like the sort of like one of them is like the House of the Commons, and then the other one is the House of the Lords. Because yeah, Stroheim has this kind of like oligarchic idea to it, or sorry, I should say Astros, and yeah, I had to change the name, but
Yeah, I remember the old name, and I forgot the
Yeah.
old name. But I remember the old name. It's like
yeah.
why did you change it? Why did you change the name?
So I mean, the in-universe reason is that Stroheim was a like more sort of like you know how like India is trying to change their name
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because
Yeah. Because
India
of
is like a colonial term for the area. So that was my in-universe reason. The real reason is Stroheim is a character from JoJo. Like that's where I got the name from. But if you know who the character is, like, I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say like there's some negative connotations that I don't really want to associate myself with. But you know, it's something to look into if you're curious. But yeah, the name Astrossen is sort of a. I actually started with the name Austria, and I was trying to like change it in a way and make it more almost like Hungarian, sort of, because like the Zulians, which are the kind of native peoples of the mountain regions, their language is sort of like an equivalent of Hungarian, and then you have the Ingles, which make up the majority of the population, and they're like a Germanic people. So it's kind of like hybridizing those two language, like the characters and the kind of way that things are spelt. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's more reflective of the country and also like more unique too. So I like the name. But yeah, like yeah, it is. I mean, you know, the language is Germanic, but the city itself is like not all that German. Like it's very it has some elements that are taken from like Austria and Germany, but it's also like kind of sort of looks like Chicago too. You know?
Fair point.
Yeah.
Well,
So it has a mix of influences. Yeah.
well, why is the culture of Astrosin sort of based on Yetis? Like, why did you have any other ideas about what to base the culture on, or did you decide from the get go to have it be based on what it is today?
Yeah. So ooh, I I mean, to get into that, I mean, my name is Yeti Zuli, and I kind of that kind of became. It started off as like sort of a joke when I was making some mini game maps with some friends. Like we were making a Yeti themed map, and then I changed my skin so we could like take some pictures with it. And then it sort of just stuck with me, and then I ended up changing my name to reflect that. And then I don't know. I thought it would just be like an interesting little lore thing. Like there's mountains. I was like, oh, maybe there's like some Yetis living up there. But I mean, it sort of got retconned out of the lore. So now it's just like kind of these mountain people who have like white hair, basically, and they're like taller than average people. But they're still like humans. But I don't know. I think it's. I mean, I don't see a lot of other places in Zest that have really like experimented that much with like the kind of if you want to call them like fantasy races, I guess. And maybe that's just because like people kind of just like build modern cities and there's not really much of a place for that. Yeah, it's not really something that they're interested in. And yeah, so I kind of retconned it to reflect that because I was like, okay, you know what, like it is a little out there. But yeah, like I don't know, it has an interesting lore. I mean, the mountain people come from the Zulapathians, and they what they did was they came down from the mountains and basically conquered the Ingol tribes that were living in the river basin. And then there was a lot of like infighting between them. And then King Ferdinand, which is what like the main train station.
Ferdinand Station, yeah.
Yeah. So he like united the tribes and created what was then known as Stroheim. So that's kind of like the origin story. Yeah, I mean, like those tribes have sort of been around since before the like the great collapse of Year Zero. But they were very, they were kind of kept to themselves, very isolationist tribes in the mountains. So they didn't really have like much of a influence on kind of like the trajectory of things up until they like went down from the mountains. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like interesting little overlaps, I think, especially with like the Ingols and the Ingolian Empire. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting place, like especially even like the Confederacy of Himagoria, like as a whole. Like there's a lot of like interesting little like social dynamics going on. Yeah.
Right. Well, finally, you mentioned that you're into architecture. You mentioned that you're into these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, what is your future regarding what's your future? What do you think is your future? Do you think that video games have influenced your life in your future? And really, what hobbies do you have in general besides video games?
I mean, I think definitely yes. I think video games have most definitely influenced my kind of trajectory. I mean, you ask a lot of architecture students, like what kind of got them into this industry. A lot of them, surprisingly, will say Minecraft. Like, I mean, the joke used to be Lego. Like even engineers, it's like, oh yeah, I used to play with Lego as a kid. But yeah, now like Minecraft in a lot of ways has become the new Lego. So I think like sort of, yeah, it's like the creative freedom it allows. It's like the kind of thinking about systems, thinking about buildings. I don't think I think video games will probably always be a part of my life. Because even like while I was working, I came back to these games to kind of get that creative outlet. But in terms of my future, I do want to get licensed. I don't know if I'm going to get licensed in Ontario or if I might move to Europe. I do have like EU citizenship, so that's always an option for me, and it's something I've been thinking about, but I haven't really given it that much consideration. But for the times I've been to Europe, it seems like they have a much more of a design culture than Canada does, and a lot of that has to do with like the way that projects are kind of given out. In Europe, there's a lot more competition, so you'll have people like put out a request for a project, and then a bunch of firms will come back with like proposals, and you might get these wild ideas that you otherwise wouldn't have access to with sort of like traditional methods. So that's why in Europe there's a lot more like kind of innovative designs. That's a big part of the reason. But I mean, Ontario is trying to change things. Like, I mean, we have a really bad housing crisis. Probably, I mean, you're from New York, right? So you kind of,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, I
you kind
do.
of know how it is. Yeah. So like in Toronto, it's pretty bad. But like the municipality and the federal government are trying to work together to make changes, and part of that is adopting a lot of the kind of code changes that Europe has. Like in New York, you guys can build like single stair buildings. I think they're usually called like walk-ups or something. Like point access apartments. Those are very rare in Canada. Like that is it's actually like illegal in a lot of places. Which is like really unfortunate, because like that's like the kind of meat and potatoes of like a good like dense, like compact city. But I think we have a lot to learn from you guys. Like I think Chicago and New York are probably much better planned than Toronto.
But we are older. We're older
Yeah,
cities, so that kind of,
yeah.
you know.
No, I mean, yeah, that's true, but not by much. I mean, like Toronto's a pretty old city. It's not as old as Montreal, but it's not like a new city by any means. But it has like like relatively recently, like a lot of the kind of building stock has been replaced. I mean, you've probably heard this before, but Toronto is on track to beating New York for having the most high rises.
Is that
Um,
so?
yeah, because like we're just rapidly building condos. uh,
That's good at
which I
least.
mean, yeah, I mean it's good,
It's
but
housing, but
it is housing, yeah. But I mean, what ends up happening is a lot of these condo buildings kind of sit empty because
no one's
people can't
buying.
really afford the rent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like a bit of a standoff going on in Canada right now, because like the housing prices are dropping surprisingly, because nobody can afford to buy. And I'm curious to see how this pans out, because like I don't know, people say like, oh, the housing bubble is gonna pop, it's gonna pop. Maybe it is gonna pop. I don't know. But it'll be interesting either way, because like this is kind of the environment that I'm going to be entering the work, like the kind of professional workforce in. So I don't know. I think a lot of things are going to change, in my opinion. I think we're going to adopt more like holistic ideas of how we want to plan our cities, rather than kind of like just treating each building as like an individual project. Yeah.
Well, that's my questions, and the format of 10-15 is I get to ask you 10 questions, and you get to ask me up to 5 questions in return. So I'm going to throw the stage to you for you to ask me
Yeah.
other 5 questions.
Okay. I mean, I think my first question it goes back to the Minecraft server. I mean, there was a time where, yeah, I co-ran a server. I used to be staff, like for a short amount of time. Like, what is the kind of biggest misconception you think people have about like running a server, or like what are some like unique kind of challenges or opportunities that you've had as a result of running the server?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think it's when you're managing a Minecraft community, it's just essentially managing a community. Except now you have to manage both the Discord server and all its various aspects, and you also have to manage the Minecraft part of it, the Minecraft server. And these two things are very different because Discord is web based. It's not like it has its own application, but it's not its own thing. Minecraft is, and Minecraft doesn't have like the kind of features that Discord has. So you kind of have to be an expert in Discord and Minecraft at least enough to, moderate it. You have to be an expert in these two things, and it takes a while to learn the Minecraft side because you have to learn how to start a server, how to restart it, how to investigate when something goes wrong, and how to resolve those issues. While in Discord, it's a different challenge because it's easier. It's actually easier because to set up the server because you have all mods, you have all these features. You have to, and Discord has its own help page that you can look towards just in case you don't know. But it's also harder in a way because now you're directly managing the community. There is nothing that separates you from the community. You have to be a moderator at all times. So combine that with the Minecraft aspect of actually managing a dedicated server. Because our Minecraft servers are based on other people's servers. Like it's actually we don't have like a dedicated server rack
you're like renting renting a server.
So if things go down on their end, it's we have to wait until they fix their stuff. And
you're kind of just like waiting.
So on Discord, yes, sometimes Discord does go down, but it's Discord that goes down, not your server on Discord. So in terms of that, you have to learn two different aspects. You have to learn how to moderate. You have to learn how to manage the server, as I said. So if you learn both of those things, or if you learn enough to get by with a large staff, as we do, or as we did, then things will go okay. And I'd say we're doing all right. There are things we can improve on, and as an admin of the server, I will admit that there are things that we can improve on. There are things that we should improve on, and both on Discord and on the Minecraft side.
Well, I guess that kind of leads me into my like second question. What kind of future goals do you have in mind for the server, or either like on the Minecraft side or like the Discord side, or just in general? What kind of things do you think are coming, or maybe are in the works?
I can tell you that we've been working on some server side events to help with Allies community because we both know the server has been a little dead. It has been a little dead for a little while now. It wasn't to the same heights as we had like last summer and so forth. But I understand that in terms of Minecraft communities in general, and I've been in Minecraft communities for a long time, and I'm sure you have as well, that
Mm.
the winter, the winter is when things are most quiet. In spring, it's
Right.
all right. Fall is all right, but it's the summer. That's where more people are showing up. That's because of the school break and whatever. You have more time to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
So it's summertime. June, July, August, a little bit of September. That's when I think you should expect more people to show up to these things, to these events,
Yeah.
and to the summer in general. And that goes
Yeah.
not just for sets, but for literally almost any server that has
Yeah.
a public face to it. And
That's true. Yeah.
and I personally want the server to have more people and more opportunities to grow. I'm not saying that our community is bad. It's definitely not bad. We do have some things to improve on, sure, but the people are pretty fine. They're pretty chill. You're chill. Everyone's chill and all that. We have our own in jokes, and I'm pretty happy for where we are right now. But I do think that if we have more people to roam around to build projects and to contribute to our existing projects, then I'd say we're doing pretty good there. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, like I think that's very true. Like, for the summer, yeah, I think like events and stuff would help a lot because, like, summer's an interesting time because, yeah, that's the time to really, like, I think pick up new players, and sort of entice them with like the kind of features and yeah, I think like having events and stuff, I think that's like really good for the community.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's nothing like wrong with like the kind of existing community, but I think it's good to try and like have like a sort of growth plan in place, just because like players come, players go. You sort of, yeah, like I guess you kind of want to be able to like replace some of the like player body as like people come and go, so that you always have like a sort of consistent base of people playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you have the growth plan, I'm not saying that growing the player base is like the end all be all. I'm not saying that it's the final thing, the final plan I'm working towards. It's obviously a means to an end. The end I don't know, but it's like you said, when players come and players go, and we recognize that, and I'm sure that we can bring in more people. We have the Reddit bot that's like posting Minecraft server in the Minecraft server subreddit like almost every day now. But,
yeah.
But and we have a Blue Sky, we have a Twitter, Twitter.
Oh yeah.
And all those stuff. But any server that wants to survive longer than a year must have a growth plan, must be able to, I don't want to say replace. It's a bit mean, but
I don't mean like replace in terms of like, but I just mean like as an abstract number. Like, you always have like a certain rotation of people that are going to play, and that doesn't mean that people who leave aren't going to come back. Like you said, like, like sometimes there's times of the year when certain players are not as active.
Yeah,
and other players are more active, and that's really all it is.
Yeah, and on eDog, eDog's, if you know eDog, besides the current ownership, you also know eDog for the fact that it was a pretty big creative server. It had 800 slots, 800 player slots. And in 2015 or so, 2014, 2015, if you left and you wanted to come back, you had to wait. You had to keep trying. Like, there wasn't a queue system like QB2T, but you had to like click on the server, click join, and then you would be told server's full. You have to click the button that acknowledges that, and then you have to repeat that until you manage to get in. And God forbid you have a bad internet. God forbid you have a bad internet. You're fucked.
Yeah. That sounds like a terrible system.
but that was like 2014, 2015. I mean,
yeah.
Now it's you can go in any time, but you probably shouldn't. Link. But
yeah. Well.
Even then, there are people on EDOG who've played like 10 years ago, 5 years ago. They keep coming back as like sort of nostalgia because that's where they had wonderful memories. That's where they've built up stuff. If we manage to survive for another few years, I imagine that we'll have that too. People coming back just for nostalgia, just to relive the memories that they built on Seth Creative.
Yeah, I think people already do that to some extent. I mean, yeah, like it's pretty successful when that can happen. But yeah, at the same time, it's like EDOG, they have the kind of nostalgia aspect, but like beyond that, I mean, I don't know much about EDOG to be honest, but I don't imagine that they have like a sort of like are they still very competitive in terms of like attracting new players? Like I don't know.
I don't know either, and I would love to know, but
yeah,
whatever they're doing, I don't think it's working because every time I see them, it's like at most 15 people, and admittedly the only times we've reached like 10 people is during SAN meetings and stuff like that. But with CES, we haven't had like 100 people show up at once. We haven't had like 50 people show up at once. We haven't had so many people show up. But on EDOG, you had that history of, again, 800 people in 800 player slots. That history is there. They have that. Hell, even in 2020, it was just like 5 years ago now, and I was big then. It still could hold like more than 50 people. I want to say up to 100, but I'm not sure. My memory can fail me on that, but definitely a lot more than what they have now. And
wow, that is yeah. I did not know that they were that big. Wow.
Honestly, it's easy to forget. Yeah. It was like again 10 years ago, but
that's true. Yeah, that was kind of the height of, I guess, Minecraft multiplayer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So I guess that's another thing. It's like times change and like who like what kind of players stick around to play Minecraft. I think Zest has been pretty good at capitalizing on a certain type of player who's like interested in these kind of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I feel like like you mentioned the Zan meetings, like I think those have been like that's a pretty unique feature. I don't know any other servers that have anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, like, yeah. I think there's a lot of aspects that kind of set us apart from your like typical creative server, because I feel like EDOG, I mean, from what I've heard, it sounds like kind of like a quintessential like free build server, which
well,
I mean,
kinda.
Yeah.
it has plots. It has plots. It's basic plots.
Oh god.
And then it has the free build on the side, and then it has like another plot server. It has the owner's personal project, which is a big city based on London, essentially, which has its own tube network. And I can talk to you guys all day about how that tube network it was implemented in free build. It kept lagging the shit out of the server, it also is trying to go into survival, but it keeps failing, and I've seen that myself. It's like a cycle, but
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't think survival. Yeah, survival does not work on. It's a different player, you
Yeah.
know. Like the people who play creative are looking for a different experience. I don't know. Yeah, like oh god, plots.
Well, that's
Plots
what we
make
were
me
famous
so
for.
upset.
Listen,
Yeah,
listen. The free build aspect of EDOC did not come in until 2019. Like literally, when
that's
Shattertown was
crazy.
founded in December 2019,
Yeah,
the free build part of the server was only out for like 2, maybe 3 months before that. So yeah, before then it was all plots.
yeah. No, plots are like I don't know why anybody opening I mean I don't know if people are like opening new servers that often these days, but like if I was starting a creative server, like I would not do a plot server. Like there's way too many plot servers,
Yeah,
and it's not that I don't know. I feel like
it's a
free
gimmick.
build is way more interesting than plots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're not restricted to the confines of a plot.
yeah, and like yeah, with free build, you know, you have the possibility of like connecting to somebody else's thing. Like in plots, you know, you have your neighbors, but like you're kind of like separated by this impenetrable barrier. So it's like you're kind of just doing your own thing, which I
Actually,
feel like kind of limits the experience. Yeah.
I should probably tell you that Seth's Creative wasn't the first server that Shattertown was imported towards.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, actually, we tried out Ace Creative, which is another plot-based server that unfortunately could never get its free build server up, and unfortunately didn't last that long. But when it lasted, we actually managed to port a small piece of Shattertown into a large set of plots that merged together to fit this Shattertown plot. And yeah. And
Wow, that is. I mean, sounds like quite the operation.
it was, and again, by the way, when we were importing Shattertown both to Ace Creative and to Cest, we did this without telling the owner. We didn't tell the owner, and we did it like separately. I think actually Moraine Sinos
Yeah.
imported Shattertown to Cest, and she did it. They did it, in pieces, and tried to do it without alarming the owner. I don't know if the owner found out when they were doing it, but again, we did this without the knowledge or the permission of the owner. We did not do world edit at all. In the EDOG world, you don't have world edits, so it's all by hand.
Oh man, that sucks.
So all the highways that we built on EDOG, not really me, but like Jens, Mouse, they all built it by hand with a group of folks. Shattertown was built initially on hand. Say 2 was built by hand. Arrowville was built by hand, and it's another thing. We didn't have world edit. Not even importing these.
Yeah.
So,
I admire the dedication. I could never do that.
So yeah, and so in terms of that, Seskir is kind of the only server that Shattertown has in terms of having world edit. And
Wow.
Cersei too, and sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened is you had like a lot of servers like what is it called? World of Corrales and stuff like that.
Oh
which
yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I mean they kind of started this like trend of these sort of free build servers, not really, where it's like a sort of like a theme to them or something. And I guess in some ways like Zest is sort of like a hybridization of like that, but also like more traditional free build ideas. Just in the sense that like it's free build, but it also like you have all these creative tools, and there's like some standards that are like followed for like the Rails or whatever, and it's like a light version kind of, which I think a lot of people appreciate. At least in the limited polling that I've done, seems like something that people like. Because there was a time where I tried to get into like some of those like servers where they build like cities or whatever. But also something I don't like about those servers, I feel like their cities are always like American styled, and I'm like, can we do something more interesting, please?
It feels intimidating to be on those servers when you're
It is,
exploring them.
yeah.
Like they built all this stuff, and you're just in there, and you might not have that experience. So you see this building and these roads and this railway and whatever, and Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, that's true. You know, it's like, oh my God, wow, like people built all this, but also it's like, and I think Zest is right for doing this, but like the ranks, like, there's like building ranks and stuff, and you get like promoted based on like, I guess how many projects you do, or like, I don't know, like the skill or something like that. But I think it just creates this really like negative environment where like people are always comparing themselves to each other. So like I'm happy that we never did the rank thing, like the building ranks, because that is it's, I don't know, I don't think it's a good path to go down. But
Fair enough. No, fair enough.
Yeah.
It's eh.
I don't know. It works for some places.
Yeah.
I mean, I think on a lot of those servers, a lot of the people that play are like older audience, like even older than myself. And I don't know. I might be pretty old for a Minecraft player now.
I think
But-
so am I. So am I. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, yeah, like, it's interesting. I mean, like I've seen even like Alpine's server, and some of the stuff they do, like it's interesting stuff. But yeah, I think it is like through the kind of regulatory way that they do stuff, it is a little, well, not a little, it is quite limiting in not only what is possible, but like even like the feeling that you're kind of able to do what you want. Like like in a lot of ways, like things are kind of told to you in like a top-down way, like, oh, this area is going to be for this area is going to be for this, like, oh, you can only build houses here, or you can only build whatever. So yeah, I don't know, like I'm happy that there isn't really that culture in Zest, which I don't think there would have been, because it, like, we kind of have our free build heritage, so.
Right. All right. We've gone on for almost an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
I don't know if this is our longest podcast episode. I don't know, because I had like one that was almost as long as this, but I don't know. Do you have any more questions, or?
I mean, I think you've answered a lot of my questions. Like, I mean, it's been interesting to hear about, like, sort of your history and how you got to Zest, and the kind of trials and tribulations you've had along the way. Yeah, no, this has been like, I think this has been a pretty enlightening episode. I don't know, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so did I. I mean, irrespective of this episode, I mean, you've been a wonderful person, and
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're an interesting guy. You play Chivalry 2, and you play Minecraft and all that stuff. And my brother plays Chivalry 2, and he's pretty good at it. I don't know if I'll probably send you, after this episode's done. I'll probably send you his username so you can chat over.
Okay. Yeah.
And then,
I mean,
maybe
I'd like to have some people. Yeah, I'd be happy to have some people to play with. I mean, You play as well, don't you? So
Kinda. I mean, I did stream it. I did, and I haven't been playing much console lately. I haven't really been playing much console lately. It's more Minecraft and
yeah.
stuff like that. But yeah. All right.
All right.
Well, that is the end of this interview. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to throw it to me for the conclusion, and we will see you folks next time.
All right. Thank you for having me.
No.
Now, in speaking with Sule, I had this feeling that we've both been wonderful friends in the past life. We have a couple of things in common. For example, we both play Chivalry 2 and Minecraft. Hell, we even play Roblox together. Well, not together. We both play. We also have a keen interest in urban planning, and he has an interest in architecture. And he put a lot of effort to Stroheim to Strauss into his projects. I'm happy for that. And it speaks to me as a man who, if we talk about him 30, 40 years from now, we probably would talk to him as if he was a wonderful artist, as if he was a wonderful architect. He built wonderful days for his city. Like I said with Jens a few interviews ago. I think he and Jens have a lot in common. And I'm pretty proud of that. I'm pretty proud that we have a community full of these like-minded individuals who care for one another. Because urban planning is a weird world, but it is a world full of wonderful, nice people who want to do the very best for the places that they are planning. And that's a community that deserves my full support. And I think that's a community that you folks might appreciate. With all that being said, I'll see you folks next time. Take care, everyone.